BMX, kind of hits a bigger picture because not everybody's going to be a champion. Not everybody's going to the Olympics. Not everybody's going to win grants. And if that's all that matters, it's going to be an awful lot of disappointment. So there's got to be something else to drive these young people. And some of it's social. Some people race. It's an activity. Keep these kids busy. Keep them off the couch and keep them fit and so forth and so on.
BMX Breakthrough is bridging the gap from old school to new school, from tracks to manufacturers, from new riders to their local tracks, and it doesn't stop at racing, but the mission is to connect people with bikes. Join me, Jay Oaks, as I interview key people in the sport and in the industry that are involved in their local circles, in their communities, at their local tracks, and aiming to make a difference on a local level. You'll hear stories, marketing tips, failures, successes, and a way to make a difference in your local BMX community. Let's dive in as we kick off this next episode. Jimmy Phillips, so exciting to finally get you on the show. We've been talking about it for quite a while now, and we would have met a couple of years ago, I think at Frogtown. It was one of the first times, but let's just have you do a quick introduction of who you are. I've got a bunch of questions that I want to ask you and stuff, but Jimmy Phillips, who are you?
Good question. So I'm Jimmy Phillips, team manager for SE Racing. Recently, we've reorganized a little bit. We'll probably get into that in a little bit, but I live up by Yosemite. I'm 28 miles from the Highway 120 entrance, which is considered the north entrance. We live here for a reason. When we were young, we wanted to be closer to Yosemite, but work and jobs and housing availability and all of that kept us down in the Sacramento Valley. The reason I bring that up is I've got a strong climbing and mountaineering and backpacking and outdoorsy mountain biking, all that kind of stuff. So we're up here for that.
Awesome.
Knocking on the door of me being almost 65 soon enough. So and I'm retired and playing around with BMX.
Right on. Well, okay. So on that, as we transition, you have a huge background in mountaineering and climbing, and then you've done some surfing on Instagram. You're Jimmy Surfer, I think. Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
So you've done all these sports, but what I think is probably the most fascinating thing about what you've built in the world of BMX is that you don't have a background in BMX.
Not really. I do from way back in the day. I remember when BMX handlebars first came out, and all the kids in the neighborhood, were frothing, so to speak, to get BMX handlebars and put them on our Stingrays or equivalent type of 20-inch bikes. And then number plates were a big deal and pads. And, I remember that whole phase. Didn't really race at that point. Had a couple motocross neighbors that I grew up with, Ron and Mike Soden, that lived next door to me. Big motocross family, super cool kids. So we'd ride around the neighborhood emulating, just like you see at the beginning of On Any Sunday, that nonsense jumping and all that stuff. That just kept us entertained. We rode all the time. And then these guys would, teach me about berms and putting the foot out, flat track style and all that stuff. And then later I did race, and I always worked in bike shops as a kid. And the reason I got a job in a bike shop is because of BMX. We went to a motorcycle, a Yamaha shop, and bought big, thick, heavy spokes. And I relaced a rim, drilled out the hub, drilled out the rim, and laced it with motorcycle spokes. And I was having trouble understanding the 4-cross, 3-cross type of thing. So I went to the local bike shop. The guy's really nice, kind of said, yeah, this is how you do it, but good luck, type of thing. And so the next day I brought it in, I got all laced. Now I need to know how to true it. And he's like, wow, okay. And so that got me a job there. Then later, worked in a bike shop, started a BMX team, somehow the owner got me into an SE uniform, myself and another guy. So that's where I immediately bought a quad angle and started racing that when it came out. And yeah, so all said and done, I have a few years of racing, late 70s, early 80s. Did fairly well. Have no idea what level I raced. Can't remember. Just remember I always came home with trophies and went to nationals and did well at nationals, that type of thing. Um, so yeah, and always liked it. And then wandered off. Mountain biking hit, and boom, I was just hooked on mountain bikes. So continuing on with that story, I went from a 20-inch quad angle, which I loved, and then they came out with the OM Flyer, the 26-inch OM Flyer, and one showed up in our shop when I was working. I'm like, okay, that one's for me. And it was deducted from my paycheck every week for a few. The owner was super cool. He just let me have it and take some money out of my check. And man, that thing just fit my body size and everything really well. And it was a new class, kind of a new thing. They hadn't come out with 24s yet. I think right when I kind of started slowing down racing, a few 24-inch cruisers started showing up. And then I went into mountain biking and fiddled around with that for a while. But I used BMX as a summertime training sport because I was a skier, a snow skier, competitive snow skier. And I was in, relatively good shape as a kid as a result of that. So I think that led to being able to do pretty well in BMX, just fitness, more than skill. And in the old days, it wasn't the skill like today. The jumps were smaller, the turns were flatter, so it was really just a fitness grind if you could ride a bike, fairly well. So
That's
whatever.
fair. Yeah, and I mean, you have quite a bit of history. It's funny because as you and I have talked over the years, I feel like you've kind of alluded to having very little BMX experience, but you had quite a bit of BMX like familiarity, at least back in that time. But then, as I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you moving forward is you really didn't spend any time other than those we'll call them formative years on the BMX bike. You really didn't spend any time on a BMX bike after that.
Yep. No, no. Um, always looked at them, always had a little place in my heart for SEs because I had so much fun on it. Remember those childhood, great days. Every once in a while I throw on any Sunday and watch it again, for fun. And, but yeah, I was away from it forever. And what pulled me back to it essentially was my godson. His mother and I were chit chatting, and I'm like, you got to keep this kid active. And he was 2, 3-ish, during the COVID time. And I'm like, so, how can I help, make this, something for this little boy? So she didn't want him to do football due to the head injury type of thing and stuff. Whether that's legit or not, I'm not sure these days. But so I said, hey, I have a little experience. Skiing was too far away. I mean, if she was close to a mountain, it'd be game on with this kid for skiing because I know I've forgot more about that sport than a lot of people know. So, but so we just kind of talked and landed on BMX. And she's like, I don't know anything about this. I'm like, you don't need to. I got this. Recruited kids from his preschool, his daycare preschool, to kind of come out and play at the park it's sort of like a jump track near his house with the gap type of jumps. And then it has almost like a skateboard freestyle area, but dirt, for riding. And so I started some meetups with the kids. We call them bike track play days. Excuse me. And yeah, I figured if I could get 4 or 5 kids out there with them, that inspire him to ride and play. And it was game on. I had 30, 40 kids before you knew it. So yeah.
That is so cool. I'm envisioning Jimmy's just out there orchestrating these biker gangs of which is basically what I felt like. So the first year that I saw you at, and I don't know if we actually met that first year, or it would be year 2 of Frogtown, my first year. I don't think we actually interacted, but I just remember seeing this whole biker gang of push bikes and SE jerseys. And so that's kind of what I'm envisioning for you coming out to this bike park and bringing this whole crew of preschoolers out to go and hang out.
Basically that. It was utter insanity. It was so much fun. Um, yeah. So I would I we did a little test run. So I took his mom out there and we were playing. I would go down during the week and pull him out of daycare and we'd go play at the bike track. And that was kind of our thing to do. He'd run around on this little SE, balance bike. And yeah, we would just have fun. So I took some pool noodles and PVC, and coming from a skiing world and having, slalom or giant slalom gates and stuff, I thought I could, these little kids, knowing coaching and stuff need to work on their balance and coordination, and it needs to be fun. So I ordered a box of pool noodles on Amazon of a bunch of different colors and cut them down and put them on PVC with little caps on for safety, and would drill into the lawn and set up kind of like an obstacle course. And then, found little balance beams and stuff, plastic stepping stones. So I just kind of compiled this little kit, and we'd set it up on the lawn, and the kids would show up, see all these colors, and it looked like Disneyland or something. And it was just game on. And they would go through the obstacle course because I'm like, hey, here's the obstacle course. You start here. And then 10 minutes into it, they're just tearing it apart, rearranging it, having just the best time, these little kids. So, and then we'd spend a little time on the track and then come back, and, parents had snacks to share. And then, we'd do a little more both. And yeah, so yeah, we're fiddling around with that. And then that led to another interesting part that kind of, connects up to that Frogtown first seeing each other thing. So I'm following SE on Instagram, and I'm seeing Damon Dayton with his VW bus, and I kind of connected the dots that he was geographically pretty close. He's in Stockton, which is like 40 minutes from this bike track, maybe 30. So sitting here drinking coffee one day and said to my wife, I'm going to reach out to this guy. And because I wasn't an Instagrammer, I wasn't really on Instagram, Facebook. So she's like, you got to DM him. And I'm like, well, what does that mean? So it was that bad. So I reach out to Damon, send him a message saying, hey, I've got this group of little bike track kids, and you're pretty close. Is there any chance I could get you to just make an appearance and, kind of inspire these kids and show them your cool van? And I thought, it probably will never even hear back from this guy, and immediately ding, yeah, when, what, where? And so I told him when it was, where it was. And he's like, we'll be there. He shows up with Rosie. He's super good with the kids. He's doing wheelies. The kids are like, oh, something new, taking pictures, handing out stickers, all this cool stuff. And then Damon said, hey, you got a cool thing going here. We got to get a hold of Todd Lyons and see if we can get something rolling with you. And in my long-term thing, I was hoping that with these kids, we would get a small team going. And then I would reach out to SE and say, hey, could we get a co-sponsorship, get a few % off for these parents, and we'll run around in SE jerseys and stuff, and get these kids racing, and I can build a cool program. That was my goal, maybe 4 or 5 years down the road, which we're not even to that point yet. And so Damon connected me with Todd. I sent an email to him, and with this pie in the sky idea of athlete development, and we're going to make the next great Olympian out of maybe hopefully one of these little kids or something type of approach. And Todd answered with, yeah, it sounds really cool, Jimmy. Yeah, we don't have the resources or the manpower for that, but keep doing what you're doing. I'm like, okay, cool. So we'll still keep doing it a few years, and I'll hope for something down the road. And he left it kind of like, we'll talk again. So I'm like, I see crack. There's a glimmer of hope there. So and we're doing fine. We're just cruising along, doing what we're doing. And then that second Frogtown, I think Jason mentioned this in his podcast with you. He and Todd came rolling in together. They're supposed to meet Damon with the SE setup there, and they started driving right towards us, and then it gets close, and you can almost see the animation in the window, like, that's not us. And I see Jason or Todd pointing down to Damon, and the Toyota truck turns and zips down there. And I recognized that it was, cheeseburger and lions in the car. So somehow we got talking, and that's really what launched me into the SE thing. Todd's like, yeah, what you're doing in school, let's get something rolling. And that was kind of the beginning of it all.
I
So,
love that. Yeah,
yeah,
it's super cool. It's funny because, yeah, I think Jason's reference to it was that it looked more SE than what SE had done, and which is funny because I've had conversation with George at Frogtown, who like his setup looks more GT than GT's setup did. And so he's just got this collection of classic GTs. And then you've got GT that comes in and, uh, it's a much smaller setup and very similar to, that of SE is that's kind of what I think of when I remember hearing Jason reference seeing that. And I thought that it was cool. I remember seeing your van. And for those listening, if you have not seen Jimmy's van, it is super cool. Set up with the ladder up it and the surf racks on the side and everything. And it's your pit space is so dialed in. And I've bragged on your space countless times. I can't even express how many times. And my wife has heard me talk about it because you've got this organization of tools. You've got this whole like it almost seems like its own room of gym space, and there's social space, and they don't conflict, they don't mix. We were at the SoCal Nationals and you had pool noodles that were on the sharp metal edges of the bleachers. And Jimmy, I just feel like I love it because I'm pretty detail oriented and I enjoy organized things. And I love your pit space because of your attention to detail and organization.
thanks. Yeah, yeah. Uh, the pool noodles at SoCal were self preservation because I got up the trailer and whacked my head once, and I'm like, okay, that's not happening again. So, but yeah, I don't know. This is a cool sport. Any sport is a good sport in its own arena. It's a unique sport. I've watched it. I haven't been a part of it, and I don't have the stories and the connections that everybody else has. But when I was messing around with it as a kid, and that's all I was doing was messing around with it. It was just buddies having a great time. Funny enough, where everybody was pretty successful. Yeah, and then it's an Olympic sport. You know, the Olympics. It doesn't get any bigger. So I feel like it deserves the brand that I'm representing, the people that were involved with this brand over the years, and the fact that it's an Olympic sport, and any one of these young people that we know could end up in the Olympics, in the future. It deserves a level of professionalism, is my approach. And, I've got the time, I've got a lot of grit, I've got a lot of energy, and I can make it happen, just through hard work, more than funds and money. So yeah, I've got, I don't know what the saying, I forget the saying, but like a mind's eye picture of what this could be and what it should be. And, everybody in this sport is, the manufacturers that are all out there, like, George and his setup, and then GT, but GT's doing what they can do. Everybody's doing what they can do to kind of keep this thing going. It's a small sport. There isn't a lot of money. I don't understand how some people are staying in business, but yeah, so I'm trying to do for the riders on my team what I can. And yeah, and a lot of parents, families are sacrificing. They always do for sports when it becomes traveling, national level stuff. Our local level stuff, if I show up at a local race, it's a whole different deal. It's not all that nonsense. But the national level stuff, yeah, there's a lot of money spent. So like the tools, I've got all these bike tools from over the years. A lot of these tools I've had for more than 20 years. And I hate to see somebody show up at the track, spend all this entry fee, gas, hotel, camping, whatever, and a spoke ruins their week, or weekend, a gear change, a broken bolt. So, trying to be prepared. And then the gym part of it is crazy, but it's not, it's right on point. These are athletes and they need to think and act like athletes. And so like those pool noodles on the lawn for the little kids, it inspires them, just having the equipment there and a little knowledge and a little training. I'm working 10 years down the road. We're not there yet. I'd like to see more use of it in a different way, slowly educating and hopefully training and inspiring. A lot of other people come in and use it from other teams, friends. And, all this stuff has a purpose when it comes to warming up. It decreases your chance of injury in the event something goes haywire, while racing. So for me, that's what it's about. Keep the team healthy, keep them inspired, keep the thought of this is an athletic thing and we should think like athletes. And most of the time I'm trained to refer to the riders as athletes. Everybody calls them, our riders. And I like to refer to them as athletes. Our handbook agreement thing refers to them as athletes, get their mindset in the right place. And yeah, so whatever that's worth. And then, yeah, it's just fun to set up. We have a great time there. And I love our team. We gel well. Everybody on it's super cool. Yeah, so I think they deserve, the best we can give them.
I love it. Your athletes do, and using that same language as you, I think it is really cool, the depth of relationship that you have, because I talk to people and I'll reference you, and the appreciation that the team has for what you do and your setup and your commitment to excellence. And because you could set up a similar pit space that doesn't have, well, I don't know how similar it would be, but you could set up a pit space that doesn't have those things, and most people wouldn't know any different. And that's what most pit spaces are, is that they come in and there's chairs and a cooler and that's about it. But when you go over the top the way that you do, I think it does elevate things. It challenges me to come in and think, oh, wow, how can I do things better? How can I be more organized? How can I make things more sophisticated? And you're just coming in and elevating that level for, I think, for the sport as a whole, which you referenced, the sport deserves professionalism.
Wow. Well, thanks for that. Yeah, there's a part of me that hopes that will happen, not that anybody's doing anything, incorrect, but like life and technology and everything else, we move forward. And yeah, if somebody's got an idea and then somebody sees it and goes, oh, why don't we do that? That's great. I've got like I don't know, business structure for this, and I've got an athlete development structure, and I would share it with anybody, any competing team, for the good of the sport. If they were interested in what I was doing, I think everybody's doing in a lot of ways better than me, but if anybody was ever interested, I would share it for the good of the sport, because we're all going to get our piece of the pie, and there's nobody's going to monopolize something like this. It just doesn't happen. So with that approach or that mindset, yeah, we got to grow the sport, and then our individual piece of the pie grows, and it's a long and slow evolution that goes through bike market ups and downs and, economy and COVID and all this stuff. But yeah, I'm in it for essentially everybody. I'll do the most I can for our group of people, but yeah, I'm like an open book on this stuff. Yeah, for whatever that's worth.
Well, I think it's similar to that of bringing in another restaurant right next to or across the street, kitty corner from an existing restaurant. And the dynamic doesn't have to be one of competition. It can be one of, okay, how do we get better? And some people will use it a little bit more competitively. Some people will get a little bit more territorial, but it's like it doesn't really have to be. And so I think there's the study of having a Pepsi vending machine and then having a Pepsi and a Coke vending machine, and it's not that they split or that they double, but they typically like quadruple. And I think in the same way as like the energy, the efficiency of the sport, I mean, right now we know, you've mentioned it, most people in BMX are aware that there's not a lot of money in the sport of BMX compared to something like skiing where you've come from, or motocross, which is the closest comparison we have. Even mountain biking. But but why? And so what does it take to get to elevate that level? And I think that, pit space can be maybe a piece of that puzzle.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There's a lot of dots not connected for me in this, and with all the different things I've done, and you know, I've been exposed to a lot in my life. I feel like, fortunately, um, and I think a lot about how to connect things. So I'm the way I'm wired. I've got to connect dots. So I'm trying to learn to connect the dots of this BMX stuff along with stuff that I know is a proven formula to work. So on the marketing side of stuff, I don't even really look at that. So we've got Todd Lyons, director of SE, took a huge chance with me, didn't even know me, and put me in this position, based on a phone call pitch to him, so to speak, and a little Jason and Courtney reference. And he's like, yeah, game on, Jimmy. Let's do this. Let's see where it goes. And we've got a guy, Todd Losey, who a lot of BMXers know. I've never met him, talked to him a few times on the phone. We email pretty regularly about stuff. Yeah, those two guys have the marketing side of stuff dialed in, and Todd with this big bike wheelie stuff, crushing it, of course. But I do know the like team building side of things. So to me, the commodity here is the team. It's got a really good name associated with it that has a ton of history, but the team is the commodity, is the way I'm structuring this. And we'll move our share of bikes, but I mean, Todd has shared numbers with me, and I'm like, wow, that's nowhere near as much as I thought it was, And then I just do some rough like math saying, okay, a frame costs this much, a dealer must get it at roughly this price, and then I know what he gave us for a budget to run the factory squad riders, entry fees and stuff, and I'm like, man, that's like 85 frames to break even. For the money he's giving us. And it's like, wow, that's 85 frames. And these numbers I'm making up there, I don't think I'm too far off degree wise, but these aren't real numbers. So I'm like, man, so if you have a retail store, and you got to give away 85 of something before you make $1 on the first one, and then all that stuff moves, so you've got a lot of dollars to make before so it just, like the business structure, it's like, man, this is a tough business. And just on the BMX side of it, the racing side of it, I don't think it could stand alone as a business for SE. This is just my opinion, but thank goodness for Todd's innovation of the wheelie stuff in this big bike and all that's come from it, because it makes it so this racing brand continues on. And I don't really go on the ride outs. I've been on a couple of them, some of the smaller ones and stuff. They're a ton of fun. But a lot of times I just focus on what I'm doing, the racing side of it, letting Cheeseburger and Damon and D Blocks and all those guys hold that down very well.
At this time, I want to give a special shout out and thank you to our 2025 sponsors who are helping us make the mission of BMX Breakthrough happen, which is to grow the sport at a local level. These sponsors, you can find more about them in the description, and then you can use their coupon codes. And you may be saying, I don't need a coupon code, but I would ask you, please use that coupon code as a way to help us all track what we're doing together. It helps them, it helps us, it helps everyone. So at our gold level, we have Box, Mongoose, and Pro Lids. At the silver level, we have Dan's Comp, LRC, and Pro Start. And at the bronze level, we have Command Aviation, Danger Snacks, Fly Racing, Gear Blocks, Justin Shepard Title Examiner, Lincoln Park BMX, Sign Dog Northwest, Sound Cedar Lumber, and Tasco. Once again, you can follow the links in our description to find out more about these phenomenal brands. You can find the coupon codes for some of them available there. And thank you so much to our 2025 sponsors. Now back to our episode. Within the sport, there's a lot of different, obviously with anything, there's a lot of different moving components, and it takes a lot of things coming together and unifying and combining in order to move anything forward that is of significance. And I think BMX is a pinnacle of, maybe, I don't know, in some ways a pinnacle, but it's a piece of substance. It's something that has so much intertwined and so much to it that it does take a village. It's like raising a child, right? It takes a village to raise a child and to care for something. It takes a community, and it takes BMX working together, and it takes outside perspectives like you're coming in with in order to develop and move things forward, and to be able to ask questions that other people aren't asking, because without outside perspective, people are just too close to something sometimes. And so yeah, having you come in is fantastic, I think, for the sport as a whole. And I know I've talked about it already, but I have been encouraged and inspired by what you've done. And then I love seeing the community that you've built of younger riders, because we go out to events like Frogtown and Dirty Fest, and that's where I feel like I see some of your young riders in full force. But what is it that you see? Because you were inspired to develop this team based on your godson and what you wanted to help create for him. So what is it that you see as BMX bringing into the lives of young kids?
Good question. Yeah, so the involvement with my godson, some people have a little insight to my background, and they'll say, "Oh, you're going to try and make an Olympian out of this kid and stuff." And no, the goal for me is to build, as you say, a community around him. It's about these kids just riding bikes, goofing around, playing, having fun. When it comes to the track life side of it, racing's racing. All these kids race. They all get in the gate. They all hit the finish line. They do what they do. They get the results that they get. There's a variety of things that come from that. But the minute they're not racing, especially the younger ones, they're running around, chasing each other, hot wiring a golf cart, running around, something, so to speak. And they're just being kids having fun, they're running up and down the bleachers at SoCal. They're dropping stuff off, up there and watching it float down or whatever. They're just kids being kids. And these kids don't live near each other geographically, but they get out of the car. I cannot tell you when I'm setting up how many kids come by and go, "It's Camden here, Hendricks here." They're all looking for, one of the young kids to play with, So I'm like, no, they won't be here till tomorrow. And they're like, oh shoot. And then I see him running off with some other kids a few minutes later. And to me, that's the cool thing of all of this. The racing and the discipline and what young people learn from sports is amazing. But the friendships that grow, and then the parents become friends because the kids are friends, they stay in touch, and it's just a good thing. We as people need all that. And so BMX, kind of hits a bigger picture, because not everybody's going to be a champion. Not everybody's going to the Olympics. Not everybody's going to win grants. And if that's all that matters, it's going to be an awful lot of disappointment. So there's got to be something else to drive these young people. And some of it's social. Some people race. It's an activity. Keep these kids busy. Keep them off the couch, and keep them fit, and so forth and so on. So yeah. I guess that's all I'm trying to do, is just pull these kids together and build a little group to have fun.
It's totally accurate in the community side, is that we talked about, we didn't end up going over to the Show Me State Nationals in Missouri, but they weren't that far away. And there was a side of me that my kids don't really care about racing at that level. And I was considering going over there and not even having them race, but I wanted to go over and take the trailer because of the dynamic that happens in the parking lot. And like I said, they don't care about that level. We've raced just a couple of nationals together, and one that they raced was in Bakersfield, I think in 23, and we camped. And the dynamic, I think they had way more fun riding their bikes. It rained all weekend. They got to ride their bikes around, and they got to play with friends and hang out in the parking lot and do all these things. And there were kids making jumps and jumps into the puddles, and that was what they enjoyed. And there's something about being able to go somewhere where other kids will have bikes and be excited to run around and get to play and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and then I guess on the other side of that is, with some background that I have and can bring to this, using my godson as an example again, if he comes to me later, 10 to 15, and says, hey, I want to, because he'll be around this because he likes to hang out with me, and he's going to come to races and travel and do this stuff. But if he comes to me and says, hey, I want to get good at this, it's game on. I know exactly what to do. And, the whole goal was to start a little team and then get a couple older riders on my team so I could learn from them the whole system, because you don't want to race, a 5 moto local track and become an expert in a year. And then, a lot of people wander down that road, and then they're surprised, and then they go national racing, and it's like, whoa, a whole different game here. So, having this team and being around, Jason Morris, Courtney, Maddie Braden, Chase, Tomas Fernandez. These guys have taught me so much, technique, tactics, strategies, fitness, everything, equipment. And that's what I was hoping to do. So my goal is, by the time this little 6-year-old is, 9, 10 years old, I've got a pretty good handle on this sport and can stay ahead of him on the coaching side of it. Like my jersey says coach on the back, but that was for these little kids. I don't really coach anybody. Maddie Braden's working with me for over a year. But I don't have the role of coach on the team, so to speak. I leave that to Jason and Tomas, and, I facilitate, questions and answers. But so when these young kids come up, I'm hoping to be a step ahead and have enough, mileage without having gone through a whole lifetime of racing myself. I'm amassing it from Jason and all these people. And, my style of coaching is what they call a cooperative coaching. I'm not like a drill sergeant coach. And I found great success in, I don't know, I kind of call it like a stealth style coaching. I'm coaching and they don't even know they're being coached. I like to focus on one thing at a time, little subtle hints here and there, language and verbiage that they hear from a young age come up, and then all of a sudden it clicks, and it's something as simple as little tiny kids look ahead. They don't look ahead when you say it. You look ahead, look ahead, look ahead, look ahead, and they hear it enough. And one day you go look ahead and they're like, I know, I remember, like game on, you just did it. And then, if they struggle with that, we call it a cue word. And I remind them, hey, when you're in the gate, what's your cue word? Look ahead. Yeah. So tell yourself, look ahead. So, little things, because I'm sure Jason could tell you and I how to win worlds in about an hour. And you and I are going to not go out and win worlds. We got to put in the time. And so everything takes time to build those skills, of course. And so, they don't need a ton of information all at once. So if I do a practice day or a training day, my goal is we'll ride the whole track, but we're working on only turns. And so I don't know. I can go into all this stuff crazy in depth and whatnot, but I don't know. I'm trying to take a different approach based on a model that is proven to work over the last 40 years. And I've got, just extensive paperwork and hopefully knowledge on it. I'm not an expert at any of it, but I've got a lot of life skill and knowledge on it. So, trying to apply that to the team and the kids. And
yeah. And coming in, like I've mentioned before, with the outside perspective, coming in from a different team development background and using that on a team that you are the outsider, but the outside perspective as well, coming in, and it creates something new, because again, it gives a different perspective, a different viewpoint, a different standpoint on which to move the needle forward, which is great.
Thank you. Yeah.
And so this year, your team looks a little bit different, and there's a little bit different dynamic and layout to it. So do you want to talk and share a little bit about what you're doing there?
Little backstory and stuff behind this that I won't go into, but we've reorganized and restructured the SE team as everybody knows it. I've created a nonprofit, 501c3, tax exempt, and I've worked with these type of programs before. So we're registered with the Secretary of State here in California and with the IRS, of course. And now we're a legitimate corporation for those who, don't wander in this area. So, we're governed by corporate statutes. So this team is, like a legit business team, and it's essentially a youth-based nonprofit team. So nobody owns it. I'm the president. My wife is the treasurer. My godson's mother is the secretary, and the team is its standalone entity there. Now, where SE comes into this is they've moved their racing efforts into our program. And this is in a lot of ways good for both of us. It's a better structure for a team, and it's we can chase outside money, whereas it's kind of funny if SE is a business selling bikes and they're asking somebody else to support their race team in a sense. But in this way, it's its own entity, and we can chase outside money, because one of the struggles I see with the BMX industry is it's supporting itself in a lot of ways. Every team has a discount from manufacturers, Box, Promax, Fly, and so that creates its own challenges. So we structured it like that. I'm flying the airplane at the moment while building it, so to speak. Todd Lyons, Mark Losi, and I, and some of the team members are, working through this. From all outward appearances, everything stays the same. Still have the same setups, same team riders. I'm adding people. We're maintaining our team numbers across the country and stuff. So, um, yeah, and then this allows me to go after public and private grants, and chase that type of stuff. A lot of times you'll ask a business, the local pizza partner to sponsor the baseball team, and like, oh, account says if it's not a nonprofit, I can't. It's not a right. So we've solved that. We can pursue funds outside, and hopefully do more for this team. Um, and I've got like this 10-year plan for this team, so I'm planning on doing this into my 70s, and chasing money and trying to get a outside sponsorship is good, because I don't want to see, since I've been in this BMX recent game, there's been several major players that aren't around anymore, and I think it's more than five, or more than five or six, just in the few years I've been involved. And most recently, the news from GT and stuff, um, you know, it, we don't want to see this continue to happen, you know. So I'm hoping, my wired funny views, that if this works out and people see that it works out, and that we can get some outside funding coming in, then these businesses that are also supporting teams, get some relief on the supporting the team side of it. Is what I'm hoping happens with our model here, and then share that with other people, and see if we can all make it a little better on that. So yeah, that's what's going on with the restructuring.
That's great. It's great to hear, and love hearing those updates, and even the ability for brands to jump in and to sponsor and support in a different way, because you're right that having the nonprofit opens the door in quite a few opportunities, and it also I think it in some ways softens the blow of asking for money, and makes people a little bit more receptive, because it doesn't feel like there's an angle to it. And I mean, I know you well enough to know that your mission is exactly what you say it is, and your priority is exactly what you're talking about. But the reality is that we all know that people can be hesitant to jump on board, because they wonder where that money's actually going. And it's cool to know, um, when you have an organization that when they ask for money, it's going to go where it's
Yep.
been requested. And anyway, so I love seeing what you're doing and what you've been able to create. And again, the outside perspective, working through this a little bit differently, and uh, trying to grab puzzle pieces from different areas, because I don't think what you're doing is entirely normal. It's not what everybody's pursuing, which again is what is so valuable, is having an outside perspective and having a different approach to things.
Thanks. Yeah, I kind of walk around the pits a little bit and look at what other people are doing. I know, people in the industry that aren't associated with SC, and I hear what some of our co-sponsors are doing and stuff. But I don't know. I have this saying of, I just kind of keep my head down in our own program, and just focus on, this known model that I know works, and trying to get it into our program. And in some respects, I'm struggling getting traction with it, because it's such a different thing. I'll get into a couple things with you down the road here, and explain to you, because it's radically different than how BMXers kind of build their careers and stuff. But yeah, so yeah, I'm chasing this model, and I'm hoping by like midsummer I'll have what I'm calling a manual. It's going to be like a book that's pretty comprehensive, from should a 15-year-old take creatine articles. I'm weeding through some of those, because I got asked that question. So doing a little research, finding that maybe not. And all the way up through some training. And I found that some kids don't even know how to do like a curl, properly. I don't know what they're exposed to. I wrestled and stuff in junior high and high school. So we're hit at the gym and I learned how to do that stuff young. And I'm not sure all kids that are in BMX understand, how to run or how heart rate affects max heart rate, sustained heart rate, all this stuff. And so a little bit of information on that for parents to read and kind of guide their kids. Training program, really basic. I'm working on. I've got one for Maddie's age group, pretty dialed in. Some younger kids, I see, 7 to 10-year-olds doing plyometrics, which arguably is not the best thing. Kids certainly play hopscotch and jump up and down and stuff, but most of the articles I've read are like, yeah, it's too young. That's still more balance and coordination type of development, and the adverse effects on muscles and tendons and bones and stuff. They might be playing a game that they don't want to, get into. So, doing as much research and taking the knowledge that I have and putting it together so I can put it in front of somebody and say, yeah, if you really want your kid to go someplace, at least take a look at this avenue, because it's got a lot of history and a lot of really smart people put effort into it over the last 40 years. And when I say all this, I'm referring to the U.S. ski teams model. They've got this fantastic facility in Park City. It's at the end of a road named Victory Lane, and the address is 1 Victory Lane. And I was in on some meetings when I was young, just going through some coaching certifications and stuff in that sport. I was kind of winding down my career and getting a little more involved in coaching. And we were saying in these meetings, the Europeans are just crushing us. How do we up our game? And in that day, there was a lot of, I think the wall was still up for Russia and stuff. There was a lot of, the government grabs these young and they build these athletes from a young age, and that's all they do, and they're fully funded. And there's some truth to that, perhaps, but we still had to overcome that. And right now, we have the winningest skier of all time, Michaela Schiffer, and the system works. And there might be another system that works, but at least this is a system, and it's well documented, easy to follow, and it can translate to other sports. You just need to do a little adjusting of it, but it gives a good format. And interestingly enough, to get to this point, they've got what they call a club system. So skiers will have ski teams that parents pay a tuition to put their children on and send them through the trainings and all that stuff. They have like a manual on how to build a club or a team. That all of these clubs and teams have worked together for years. The program that I worked for was very instrumental. I had a great program director, and I somehow picked up a lot of what was going on, and have brought that forward. But all the coaches and teams, so to speak, work together for the good of the country, in an athletic endeavor, trying to get our athletes to be on the world stage at the upper level, and hoping to sort of bring some of that to what we do here. We all got to work together. Somewhere it goes past our own children or the kids on our team, and at some point, we're racing for our country, in the Olympics or at Worlds or something. And we've got to work together to be a powerhouse in that. And I've talked to Jason about this, and a little bit, and there's just the conversations we're having in BMX now, we had in skiing 40 years ago. I'm not saying that it's that far behind, but the sport has evolved, and the equipment and the athletes and stuff have evolved. We have fantastic athletes in the sport that could get the job done. It's the approach is a little different. How we're taking young riders and um, and moving them through the system. So it was wildly different how we do it in skiing than BMX. So
Fascinating.
is this too much, man?
Wow.
Going too deep?
Oh man, yeah, yeah, you dropped too many bombs. That's no, I think again, the perspective, and I don't think I can stress that enough, but I think there is value in anything. I mean, I've been a business consultant for years and have come into businesses, and by providing a little bit of outside perspective, and one of the questions that I always got asked was what kind of businesses, what niche do you work with? Well, I didn't focus on a specific niche because I could come in and I could have this outside perspective, and I don't have the insider jargon and lingo to be able to help focus and shift and redirect what is going on within these different organizations. And the same is true within BMX is that you have, if everybody in the expo center at Grands is the entirety of the sport, then it becomes very, very exclusive. And if you don't have that influx of outside money coming in, if you don't have the teams that are pushing the envelope and doing things differently, if you don't have the, I think the coolest thing that BMX has going for it is a very different community, a very unique, very cool, very inclusive community. But everything else becomes very exclusive if we're not careful and if we put the blinders on and we keep moving forward. And if everything is, well, we do things the way that we do things because that's the way that we've always done things. And I mean, if you go into a very old school mindset similar to that, then it's really easy to lose out on actual development in something. And what you're talking about is bringing in something. You're saying these conversations are conversations that you were witnessing happening 40 years ago. That's that that's a long time.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, decades ago. Like, I mean, the world was very different 10 years ago from today. It was very different 20 years ago. So 40 years ago, it was very different. So if certain things just aren't keeping up, then you miss out on development opportunities and you miss out on people being able to say like, "Oh, I want to be a part of that because it's moving. It's a ship that's going somewhere." And um and in order for momentum, you've got to have new breakthroughs and new moments and opportunities and
yeah,
vision.
yeah, yeah. I'm not 100% convinced that this model is going to work in BMX, but it's not going to hurt it. I feel pretty strongly. I'm investing a lot of time, effort, energy into it. I feel pretty strongly it's going to be successful. Otherwise, I wouldn't push so hard. Um, yeah, it's going to be a baby step thing. Um, so let me go down this road. So I'm trying to build like two, I don't know, two prong approach, so to speak. So we've got, you know, the business side of it. We kind of talked about that, setting up nonprofit. That needs to be very well organized and following this manual that I have from other things. We're most of the way through the organization of that, and by the time we get midway through this year, we'll have it pretty dialed, and then we'll start being fluid and adjusting as the things work and don't work. And by the end of the year, as we go into next year, I'm going to be pretty confident that the business side is dialed. We got to chase some money. That's always the case, with a nonprofit or an organization like this. I've structured it differently. The factory riders are exempt from this next statement, but everybody else on our team, that's at the next level. Some people call it our development team. Last year it was called the Flyers. This year we're calling it the Squad. But all of those team members pay to be on the team. And, um, you know, it shocked a few people, but I've always been working towards this. I call it a tuition-based program. I look at it just the same as, dance, ballet, um, karate, little league baseball, football. And you pay a fee to be on the team, and that fee helps cover the expense of having the team. You buy the uniforms, that type of stuff. And then, of course, being on the team, you get a discount on stuff from SE, and all of our partner sponsors have generously jumped in and said, hey, yeah, we'll do a tiered program if they race novice, intermediate, expert, So, and I feel like we have a great relationship with our partner sponsors. And, thank goodness for them supporting this, because the people on the team then, as soon as they, buy a fly helmet or something, they've already saved the amount of the fee, and the next pair of box forks they buy, their money ahead. And then they have access to all the benefits of the team, the pits, and, Jason and Tomas and Courtney and factory riders to bounce things off and be motivated by. So there's that business side of it. And I think that's rolling along really well. We have a consistent enrollment in it. We're retaining the percentages each year that I thought, and we're gaining what we lose each year. So since I started this, it's been consistent. My job is to help grow it and so forth and so on. And then the other side of the second prong is, the team. And so the team is structured pretty much like everybody else's team. We've got our factory squad, and we've got this development team, but, and people call it development, but they're not, we've got riders that are, 67 years old on our team and in their 50s and stuff. And, we're always chasing the dragon, but they're not developing anymore. They're racing. They're, once you're over the age of 17, 18, development for the most part should be over on a standard model, and you're full on going for it. So we've got that team, and, that helps support the whole program. And then I'm putting this model into it on that crazy side of things that we're talking about. I'm doing something different. So if I could read you a couple of things that these are things that I kind of looked at last night and said, this kind of defines how my views are different than what we're doing in BMX. Because I think in BMX we have what we're lacking. I guess I should go back to this. What I think we're lacking is programs. I think there's a lot of programs out there, but not kind of what I call a program. Like, I don't know Donnie Robinson. I've been in proximity with him. He runs the Napa track in the Bay Area, Olympian. I hear a lot of good things about him, but I've heard a lot of good stuff about his program. He's got a program, to race locally. And, if I understand it correctly, I could be wrong. He's keeping a lot of newer riders racing locally and saying, don't start, swinging above your level here. And that's really similar to my approach in this. I don't stop or care if they race nationally and stuff. I think there's value in that too. But his approach is, this will help retain, because you're not spending tons of money traveling all over and coming home with the same kind of trophy you could get racing locally. And what that really boils down to is it's build your skills, build that skill set. Like I referred to earlier with Jason, he could tell us how to go win worlds, but we've got to do the time building the skills. And you don't have to travel to the show me, in what was it, Missouri, to build your skills. You can build your skills at your local track. And, you don't have the big moto count stuff, but you don't need a big moto count to build your skills. You need mileage, you need lap time. You need to say, okay, well, here we've got Maddie Braden, who is 16 and can jump and manual and has these skills pretty dialed in. Or Chase Newfable, same thing, wild amount of skills dialed in. Am I at that level when I'm that age? Okay, no, I got to work on those skills, build those skills. So I'm a big believer in building a really solid foundation. So I'll try and stumble through this writing is really small to read. So this program, we have phases of development, and phases are basically age. So in the phases, we look at their biological age or chronological age and their developmental age. And then also take into consideration number of years in the sport. But then here's the interesting thing. So BMX racing, we race all year long. There's almost no off season. So this is really the crux of this program that I'm struggling with the most, because all the other sports have seasons, basketball, baseball, you have all this, and then you have a preseason to do dry land training or ramp up, this type of stuff. In BMX, we don't have that really. So to get that, you have to manage a schedule and chase your certain numbers of races. So we have a competition domain, and it follows those same phases. And the interesting thing here that's so different than BMX racing is the phase one, the 2 to 6 year olds, competition. So race season and volume, this is the topic. None. No racing. Which balance bike racing is really no racing. Everybody gets a trophy, but I see a lot of parents out there racing,
It's true.
And, yeah. So, and then for the phase two, 6 to 10 year olds, it's emphasized training time over events, 10 or less events per season. So from 6 to 10 years old, they should only race 10 times.
And do you quantify an event as a local race or a national?
Any. Dropping the gate and calling it a race would be 10 for that age group.
Wow.
So there's a factor here because this is coming off a different model. So that number could be bigger, and it actually should be probably like 20 because of the all season version of it. But, and so let me go to the next one. There's, so it as they go and increase, the idea is that, when you hit 17, which in BMX, that 17 to 25 is the hot market, that's where our best riders theoretically should be and heading to the Olympics and stuff like that. And most competitive and skilled, it stair steps the events up. And the reason for that is because there's a ratio on here of training days to competition events. And maybe one of the mistakes we're making in BMX is, we go to a local race on Tuesday, we go to a local race on Thursday, and we go state, Gold Cup, or national racing on Saturday, Sunday, and we just repeat that. And I think a lot of people maybe think that racing makes you a better racer. But in this model, racing doesn't make you a better racer. It's the training that makes you the better racer. So the younger the athlete, the more the training. And then the training is dialed towards age-appropriate training, age-appropriate rest, nutrition, all of that stuff's taken into consideration on this model. So you go to a race weekend and, we're at 3-day nationals all the time. And if someone is fast, which a lot of our riders are, they transfer out first round. And then we're not too heavily stacked in those really deep gate counts. So some of our riders will go from first round to semi to main. And it's three times on the track other than whatever practice they do, a day. So that's 9 laps a weekend. Well, you can get 9 laps, Thursday night training, boom, done. And so you're going to progress further with more laps. There's value to having a full rack next to you, but that's only one skill to get used to. The rest of the skills, being effective at using the back sides of the features, manualing or pumping, to perfect that art, you need just countless hours to get really good at it. And if you race a lot, you're missing out on a lot of that training. It's kind of my thinking and approach. So,
And also, I think that we race so much in the US. I mean, talking to people from France is finding out the amount of racing that is actually done in Europe is so low. Like, I mean, we talk about when tracks race and they have more of the club model, which is like you were talking about with skiing. And I was talking to somebody and I didn't know to ask the question of how often they race. So somebody asked it for me for kind of a shock and awe and goes, "Hey, tell Jay how often you guys race." And he goes, "One, two times a year." A year? And he's like, "Yeah." And oh my goodness, like people tracks race 3 times a week in the US. And it's just a very, very different dynamic. And I think that also having so many of those races, it's so easy to learn or to lead to burnout because it can get exhausting. And I did an interview with a guy named Mike Wagner, who I think is like episode 25, if I remember correctly. And he talks about kids that hyper specialize or specialize in one sport have a lower rate of following through on that and they have a higher rate of burnout. And we have BMX has a unique season that is 12 months long, 11 and a half. We're going to be precise, 11 and a half months long. And their access to races. I mean, being in Tulsa, we have access to racing 3, 4, 5 times a week, depending on the weather. And so, you could probably average it out to at least 2 or 3 times a week year round.
yeah. Yeah, it's kind of a double-edged sword in a sense because the whole system is built that we want to race and support our local tracks. So we want to show up and we want to pay the entry fees and the practice fees and all that. And that's an important part of all this. We got to keep those tracks growing and going, and it's not an easy job for these track operators, which is a topic that comes up a lot. But I personally feel we're racing too much, so much so that my godson, I've never even discussed winning with him. When he probably has 30 trophies, medals from balance bike and whatnot around, but that was like 10 a year. And people are like, is he going to race? Is he going to race? And now he's going to build his skills. That's what we're doing. Because I've got him on this long-term athlete development program, and it's in place in case that day comes where he says, hey, Jimmy, game on, let's show me what to do to get better. Okay. At least you're prepped for that. And in the meantime, you're just having fun. And then I've even, how balance bikers, you're typically standing behind him in the starting hill. I tap him on the ribs and say, if you want to let everybody go and just follow your friend, do it. Never discussed winning with him. He has no concept that balance biking, you're supposed to try and get across the line before the other kids. So, and then as this model kind of goes, it talks about when, that all these younger kids should do as many sports as possible for, individual sports and team sports, because all of the, growth things that come from all of that. And then they start to think about right around 14-ish, what sport they want to specialize in on this model. And so, and I'm seeing it in BMX. There's some BMX specialists that are young and come through and are doing really well, great riders and stuff, and may make it to the Olympics. But they're not that great athletes overall. They're great BMX riders, but like maybe can't shoot a basketball or catch a baseball type of thing, or a jumping, a jumping on the ground skill is off or something. And that's not everybody, but I do see some of that here and there. And, our jobs as coaches and programs is to develop these kids, these young athletes, and give them, good coordination, skill, and sense of confidence, and all that stuff. And then later, as they, get a little older, 14, 15, 16, they start to take a little more control, and their drive drives them. A balance biker, the parents are taking them to the track and saying, hey, let's ride your balance bike. 15-year-olds like, how do I get to the track? If they love biking, they just can't, they got to be there. I mean, when I was skiing, I just loved being on the snow. You first one on the chairlift, last one off at the end of the day, and negotiating, can I get one more ride up the chairlift with the ski patrol, type of thing. So for whatever all that's worth.
Yeah. No, I love it. And I think that you're developing kids to have those skills, those fundamental skills, helping them to train a bit. But then also another level of that is helping them to have fun and have a place. You're fostering the ability and the culture for a good time, because and I think that's the initial reason why I wanted to have a conversation with you, is that the environment that you're creating is uh, the environment that you're creating creates a culture of fostering a good time, low stress. It's a community where you've got people coming into your pit space. They have everything that they need. They're taken care of completely. They are looked after, they're supported, they're laughing, they have a place to sit down. Even parents have a place to sit down and relax so that they're not stressed out about where their kid's going. Their kid has a place to play. The bikes have tools accessible to work on, and being able to lower those different barriers of entry to having fun, relaxing, feeling supported, all those things. It creates a different environment, and it creates an opportunity for families to focus on what they want to focus on, and their kids to be able to just go and ride bikes and not really have any concerns.
Yeah. Yeah. Gay, I think you're right, Jay. And in all this stuff I'm talking about, I'm maybe missing, not saying that part of it, but yeah, that's one of the main reasons for all this. You nailed it. And there's a reason for it. There's some sports psychology that goes on it. Like, I've got some young riders that show up, and they just want to pit, because we're in their region now with the factory team. They want to pit with the factory guys and see Cheeseburger and Camden and all these guys. And that's special to them. And they're there to race, and the results, this might be their first big national or something, and the results sometimes disappoint these younger riders and stuff, potentially. And well, obviously we try and steer that and bring all the positives out of it and stuff, but I see this a lot where they're like, oh man, I thought I'd do better here, type of thing. Or maybe it's a little bit of I wish I did better, so I'm not letting down all the big team riders that we're here seeing. But so when I set up the pits, I typically take pictures of it and send it to the riders as soon as I'm done. I let them know that I'm there with the picture. I'm arrived. And then when I get like one easy up, I'll throw it on our group text. And then when I'm all done, I'll send them a picture. And, it's all by design. It's a mental preparation, sports psychology thing. I want them to arrive knowing that everything they're used to is in place. And to me, when I was an athlete, part of the stress was just going to a new area. Where am I going to park? Where am I going to put my stuff? What food's available? How am I going to get from point A to point B? There's a lot of unknowns. And that's a lot of stuff outside of your control. When you're a high level athlete, you need to control everything you can. You got to be a control freak. You got to embrace it. There's no other way around it. If you want to be an intense high level athlete, you control everything you can. If you can control the weather, you do your best. But there's things that you can't, like the weather or a traffic jam or a flat tire. And that can throw off your performance. Just looking for your car keys. Oh man. So, I had a checklist. I laid out everything top to bottom, car keys, lunch, food, check the gas in the car, everything that I could possibly check and control everything I can so that I have the best success on the hill. And, a lot of athletes are trained that way on the mental prep side of it. So I'm trying to give these guys a little sports psychology without them knowing it, saying, hey, you've got a shelf in the trailer for your stuff. Everything's set up. We've got the tools. We've got the bike stand. We've got the warm up area. You bring yourself the bike. You can at least count on this. And that should bring some of the pressure of a big race down a little bit. Yeah. So just, yeah, providing some of that. Yeah. And then the other side is just the fun. The riders that aren't super intense and older, they get to show up and it's like Disneyland for them.
Yeah, because there's room for all. And I think that's one of the things that I love about BMX is that there's room for you, whether you want to chase down the Olympic and the world one dream, or if you want to go out and have a good time and don't care how you finish and you want to just ride the track and race for the sake of getting some laps in, there's room for absolutely everybody
Yeah.
across the board.
Yeah. Let me address that. I love those riders that are out there for the good time and don't really, their results are what they are. They're there to have fun and the reason I say I love those riders are generally really relaxed, very social, have a lot of friends, and could not be better representatives of the sport and couldn't be better representatives of our team, our bike, our jersey, because their numbers out there racing and they typically have a really good attitude. Um, Sometimes you can find the not so great attitudes with the higher level, more stress related, racing and stuff. But man, if I could fill my team, and we have a lot of these with the racers that are out there and racing, and they're trying as hard as everybody. They're training as hard, but they just have a really good time, and they bring a good vibe where they go. And if you notice, they've always got a group around them, and that group just goes around taking pictures, having fun, doing whatever they do. It's super cool. I love that part of this, and that's a big part of our team too.
So cool. Wow. Well, Jimmy, thank you. I I'm so grateful that you were willing to talk to me, and I think so much of what you're doing is valuable for people to hear. I think people enjoy seeing you around. People have seen you around. And so I just think it's really cool. And I really appreciate you taking the time to share a little bit more about the program that you've been developing and all the effort that you put into this.
Yeah, Jay, thank you. I'm honored to be a part of this, for sure. With SE being on your podcast, this is way outside of my wheelhouse to do this. So, for those people that spend the time watching this, thank you. And yeah, if anybody sees me around the track or the pits and has any ideas or suggestions on anything I've said or want to talk to me about any of this, just approach me and chit chat. I always look like I'm busy, but I'm really not that busy, I suppose. But yeah, would love to talk to anybody about this. If I'm wrong on some of this, come and tell me. I'm just trying to learn and amass knowledge and make this thing better. And Jay, man, you're crushing it with this stuff. Your podcasts, in my mind, are just on point, dude.
Well, thank you. It has been so much fun, and this year I feel like we've gained a lot of momentum. I feel like we've had some really cool conversations with different people and really just focusing on you've got the development side. We're focused entirely on the good times side and just having a lot of fun and really just pushing and trying to get people on bikes and not just kids, but kids and their parents and multiple generations. And I just think, yeah, I appreciate what you're saying because we're having a really good time with all of it.
With the age of your children and the way you guys are doing it, you say, I've got the development side, but you're doing it right. If you listen to what I say, you're doing it right. It's the fun at their age. It's the fun and the exposure and their skill building. They're skill building when they're playing on a bike. And that's
Yeah.
that hidden coaching I was talking about. Let the terrain coach the riders, give them as many different tracks and situations and conditions weather-wise to ride in, and you're building a solid foundation. So yeah, you're crushing it, man. Just crushing it.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I really appreciate it. I appreciate your time, and thanks for having another conversation with me.
Yeah, I was more nervous about this, Jay, than lining up elbow to elbow with Stu Thompson at Frogtown because this is so far. I mean, that's just a race. This is not something I'm normally used to doing. So, but it was
That's
fun.
awesome. Well, I think it was great. It went really well. I think I enjoyed having conversation with you, and I'm sure there will be lots of feedback because I think there are a lot of things to glean from your wisdom and insight
All right. Thanks,
throughout
buddy.
the episode.
I appreciate that.
All right. Well, thank you again. Have a great day, and thanks for connecting with me.
All right, Jay. Thank you very much. Say hi to the family, and we'll see you at the track hopefully soon.
Thank you for joining us in today's episode. It is because of people like you and our sponsors who make this whole thing possible because they have a desire to see the sport grow. If you would like to get involved in the mission of BMX Breakthrough, you can start by going to your local track, find a way to volunteer, help out, and serve there. Or you can go to our website, bmxbreakthrough.com, in order to donate, find out about sponsorship, or learn more.